Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, good afternoon for another early edition of College Football Nightcap. I'm your host, as always, Lucas Hill. Scout will be unavailable until we get to Saturday, but we have a lot to talk about as we get going on. Got a great thing going on. First of all, big news coming out of the Big Ten early on. By the way, we'll have casual Big Ten coming on and talking some college football with us. UCLA's has officially parted ways with Eric Bieniemy. Huge news coming out of the Los Angeles area. It was a disappointing season, to say the least, for Eric Bieniemy and company. Absolutely unbelievably bad offensive performance that you saw from Eric Bieniemy's squad. It was almost laughable just watching that offense. They were one of the worst run teams in all of college football. They had no balance on the offensive side of the ball. But it goes to show you what type of coach Eric Bieniemy is. As much as I love and respect what he has, Eric Bieniemy is not that good of an offensive coordinator, and that's why he's not going to be a head coach in the near future. It's because of results like this. That's why he's not the current head coach of an NFL team. And many people were asking, why is he not a head coach? Why is he not a head coach? It's because of results like this that he's putting up at the college level. You can't go be a coordinator going from the NFL and go back to college and think that you're going to have the same results, because you're not. You're dealing with kids around the college area, and you're just not there yet. And it sucks to say that is the unfortunate truth. So the Bruins ended up finishing 117th in total offense this year. That's embarrassing, coming from a former offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs that helped nourish Patrick Mahomes into the star that he is right now. But obviously that's what we've come down to, is that a mediocre coach is getting mediocre deals, and he's getting mediocre results. And people are supposed to act this is a surprise. People were acting like this was a surprise coming from an Eric Bieniemy offense, because it never revolved around Bieniemy. It revolved around the quarterback play of Patrick Mahomes. It revolved around the offensive genius that is Andy Reid. And if y'all don't like that, I don't care. I've said it time and time again. If y'all don't like it, it is what it is, because I'm only just going to tell you the truth and nothing but the truth. And from what I've seen from the former running back coach from UCLA and the former longtime OC with the Kansas City Chiefs, this is what you got. This is what you asked for. Now, I'm sure he'll make it back as a running backs coach. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But, guys, you got to think about what you got with a guy like Eric Bieniemy. You knew things were going to happen at the end of the day. You knew that was going to be – so you knew what was going to happen at the end of the day. You knew what was going to happen with a guy like Eric Bieniemy. So there's that. A lot more is going to be coming on throughout this game tonight. Dude, there's a lot of great stuff that's going on. How about the Oregon Ducks this year? Going into year, let me just say this. We could literally be talking about 4 teams around college football that are entering their first year in their conference after conference realignment, and they could be participating in their respective and be a top 4 seed in the college football playoff. Arizona State merging from the 12. You have with Texas coming from the Big 12, Oregon coming from the Pac-12, and then SMU coming from the American as the ACC champion. That's a very likely scenario that could happen. Well, a 3-loss team make it to a college football playoff. I don't think the committee punishes Georgia, but how will that loss affect the other teams? How will it affect a team like Alabama? How will it affect a team like Ole Miss? 2 teams beat Georgia during the season. Should they get in over Georgia? Should Georgia be left out? I don't think so. They made the conference title. They got some signature wins against Tennessee. And some other significant wins early on in the season that you needed. You beat the number 1 team in the nation at the time in Texas. So those are 2 huge wins that you needed for your program. Now, will it translate to what you have in the near future? I don't quite know yet. I'm excited to see what you have in store, and I'm excited to see what this is going to happen with this team. Really, really interested to see what you have in store for that. Going to be a lot to talk about in the near future, but we'll just have to see what goes on with that one. But anyway, guys, I know we're kind of buffering a little bit with that. I will be right back and see if I can. All right, there we go. Let me turn this thing off. I know it's a bit eerie, but my bad, ladies and gentlemen. There we go. But no, we're looking at where we are right now in college football in a completely different light, especially with realignment coming in. You knew at the end of the day what was going to happen. We knew that at the end of the day, we were going to see these new teams come in like a Oregon or an SMU or a Texas come in. And we knew that they were going to be able to dominate the conference. But teams like Arizona State, they came into their first year realignment literally after, I think they came off a pretty rough season. I think they went 4-8 last year. Had no answer at quarterback, couldn't get anything going. And then in comes a second-year head coach in Kenny Dillingham that has won 10 games for this squad and now they're getting closer and closer to a shot at a national championship run. That's mighty impressive. Absolutely impressive with what we're seeing right now in college football and with guys like that. Absolutely massive with what we have right now with a guy like that, with guys like Kenny Dillingham, who might be a Big 12 Coach of the Year, with what he's just been able to do, coming off of that 3-9 season that the Arizona State Sun Devils had this past year, and just seeing the overall improvement with what you've seen from that offensive side and how dominant that defense has been recently. I mean, that's what you wanted from a team like that. That's what you needed. Absolutely critical that you had to get something like that going. Absolutely needed to. So, if you really think about it, guys, you're going to be able to keep on with it. You're going to continue to see stuff like that. You're still going to see Cinderellas. So and when it's all said and done, ladies and gentlemen, this is only the beginning of what is going to be coming in college football. Don't be surprised if we see more of this. Don't be surprised if we see more expansions or more realignment come in and see dominant teams take over. See new eras of that conference realign. Because the college football is becoming much more wide open than it ever has before. Not just with the money that's being spent, but also with how it's being spent and how it's being utilized to pay the guys that deserve it and how it's being used to be able to produce dudes that go to the NFL draft. So I'm really excited for more of that to come in college football. It's going to be a lot of fun down the stretch of this year. We're going to see more fun in college football like we've never seen before. And it's going to be a blast getting ready to witness it. By the way, guys, I'm in the whisper room here at my our channel. It's a little bit loud in here. I had to move from an office to here because technically that's not really my office. But anywho, it's all good, said and good. So we're not going to worry too much about that. I should have came prepared for this earlier. Hold on, BRB. But anyway, the fact of the matter is, guys, we're going to be able to see something from a whole new light in college football, and I'm excited to get to see that with you. So who is the biggest disappointment and who's the biggest surprise when it comes to college football? Well, first of all, you got to start off with Arizona State with what they did this year. This was a team I don't think many people thought was going to do a lot of works this year. I thought that this was going to be another 4-8 or 5-7 team. That was going to be nothing new for what Arizona State was getting used to. They were entering with a brand new offensive coordinator after you saw the disaster of what Bo Baldwin tried to do. Was completely irrelevant last year offensively. And it really sucks to say that. And you wish that a guy like Bo Baldwin would have had a little bit of success. But at the end of the day, guys, it is what it is. And when you get a guy like Marcus Arroyo in, was at UNLV, led that great offense that they had, led a great Oregon offense whenever he was there for the brief moment from 2017 to 2019. And you talk about some of the great offenses that he's been in touch with a guy like Mario Cristobal and with some other dudes that you had, you're talking about some guys that really know how to coach the offensive side of the ball. He's been around the college game for the last 20 plus, almost 3 decades now in college football. So Arroyo has that experience that you brought to him. I would arguably consider him a Broyles Award finalist just with what he's done to transform that offense. And down the stretch, they started off so hot. Started off, I think, 5-2 on the season. Got some big wins against Oklahoma State and UCF, and people were thinking, okay, well, they still got to go through that gauntlet that is Kansas State, BYU, and Arizona. And then they were able to dominate their way through that period of time. Now they're in Arlington at AT&T Stadium for a chance to go play in the college football playoff if they can secure a victory against Iowa State. What a run that this team has had. What an unbelievable season that they've been able to have this year. They've won their last 5 games. They've been dominant throughout that stretch. Their offense is clicking with Cam Scadaboo. He's been able to really harness his true potential as a downhill running back. So you're gonna see a lot from this team. You're gonna see a lot that you haven't been able to see in a while. And I find it so funny of what we've been able to see. I find it really funny from what we've been able to see in recent years. So I'm really excited to hear that. We have in store. So when you look at the rest of the season now, this is what we're going to have to see. Can Arizona State finish? Can they dominate on the ground game like they've done all season? I sincerely believe they can. I know they can. Because a guy like Cam Scadaboo is going to be dominant on the ground. I think they go back to him. I don't think Iowa State's offense is that consistent. I think they've struggled a lot with being able to finish games. I think that Arizona State relies on the time of possession in order to win that football game, and I think that is how they win that game. I love Rocco Becht. I think Rocco Becht's a great quarterback. Because at the end of the day, who is going to dominate the line of scrimmage more? Is it going to be Iowa State or is it going to be Arizona State? And I think Arizona State's got too good of an offensive line to just throw it away like that. So give me the Sun Devils in this one. I do think they come away with a big victory. I know a lot of people have doubted them as the course of the season has gone along, but I am the only one who has a lot of faith in this team, unlike this many people. Really do. Really and sincerely. So if you guys don't like what I have to say, please let me know in the comments down below. Shoot me a DM. Let me go ahead and bring up the line. 601-980-1621. Holler at me. Let me know what you guys think. I want to hear your opinions. I want to hear what you have to say. So as we continue to go along here on this beautiful Throw It Down Thursday here on the College Football Nightcap, we still have a lot to talk about. Guys, what are we going to do? I think if you really consider what this team has in store over the course of the rest of the season with what Arizona State is going to do, there is a lot of hype around this team, and rightfully so. So what else is another big surprise in this season? I think Colorado. A lot of people consider Colorado to be another 7-5 or 8-4 season, and to come out and win 9 games this year. And a lot of people doubted them at the start of the year after going 4-8 last year, exceeding expectations, predicted to finish 11th in the Big 12, and you end up being so close to participating in the Big 12 title. If you would have beaten Kansas last week, you would have been playing for a Big 12 title. If you would have made some big plays late in the football game against Kansas State, you would be playing for a Big 12 title. That's not what we're seeing, though. But Overall, I think Colorado definitely exceeded expectations from what people thought it was going to happen, and I'm really excited for the future of what Colorado football has to offer with Julian Fleming coming to town, with all these big time stars coming in for the transfer portal from the high school ranks for Coach Prime and company. Now, does Coach Prime stay at Colorado? Probably for another year, but he's always going to explore his options. Is it the best fit for him at the end of the day, knowing that his sons are going to enter the draft next year? We'll just have to see what goes on. I know the NFL is still a calling place for him. I know that he would be beloved there, but we'll just have to see. After he came back to say that he was going to go coach for Jackson State, he's been the talk of a lot of coaching searches around college football. So next year is definitely going to be a big year for him if he can expand his search to go continue to coach around college football. Another team that I thought was a big surprise this year. Dude, who expected BYU to even come out of from in their second year in the Big 12 and make a lot of noise? Start off the year undefeated, get into the top 10, but then obviously the disappointing way that the season ended, losing to Kansas and losing to Arizona State, all likelihood with their college football playoff title hopes is essentially evaporated now with the losses to Arizona State, which really ultimately sucks. But at the end of the day, guys, you have to give respect to this BYU Cougars team. They came out and they dominated this football game. Absolutely deserved to be in the position that they are in right now. And I could not be any more excited for the future of BYU. They have a lot of guys, dude. They have a lot of dudes that they're going to have. They're going to have some dudes that you wouldn't even believe. And it's going to be a fun season for this team. Jake Retzlaff, BYU, what a season that he had. And it's just the beginning of something great. All right, let's get into some Big Ten title talk. Let's bring in none other than our good friend Kent from over at Casual Big Ten. You can check out them on X at Casual Kid Big Ten. Kent, what's up, man? How are you today?
I'm good, Lucas. Thanks for having me on. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I got you, brother. I got you. I know my quality isn't the best right now, but bear with me. I got an old freaking laptop with me, but good to have you on, brother. Good to talk some Big Ten football with you. Let's go ahead and let's jump right into it. Going into year one for y'all. Obviously, it was a crazy year with a lot of expansion coming in, brand new teams coming in. Give me an overview of just the craziness that happened this year. I think a lot of people expected Oregon to do well this year. I don't think people expected them to compete the way that they did and finish the regular season undefeated, and just how dominant they looked on the offensive side of the ball this season. Just give me an overview of not just that, but some other craziness that we got to see around the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it. I could probably do a whole show just about how crazy it was. But to recap it, yeah, I'll start with Oregon. I think that 11-1 was probably a lot of people's prediction. I think that the Ohio State game was the one that maybe people thought this is Ohio State's year. They're so stacked and they're basically on a death march to go undefeated this year. And them getting that win kind of at that point, I feel like shifted the conference back to Oregon and saying like, okay, they do have a shot to go undefeated, because the rest of their schedule after that, it was like there's gonna be some tough games, and obviously like ending with Washington with what's happened with that rivalry the last few years, there was a chance they could lose that game. But as far as the surprises, I think that the other team that's in the Big Ten championship, Penn State, I don't think there's any surprise right there at all. Like that schedule came out exactly how I think everyone predicted it. I think everyone knew they were going to probably drop that Ohio State game, and then the rest of their schedule is pretty easy. Indiana, obviously, everyone knows about them already, but they're the biggest surprise, I think, overall. But I'd even throw Illinois in that conversation as well, because I think even the most optimistic Illinois analysts and fans were saying, the ceiling was like 7 or 8 wins, and they got all the way to 9. So I don't know if anyone saw that coming. Big surprise from them. And then on the back end of that, like how bad Purdue was this year, I think people knew they were going to be pretty bad, but not winning a conference game, just one win overall, like that's just historically bad. And maybe even on the other side of that, I know this is weird to say right now, but Michigan being as bad as they were in the middle part of their schedule, obviously they end on the high note with the big win at Ohio State, but like the middle of when they couldn't figure out what was going on with their quarterback play, it was just a really tough year for them. So surprises all around the conference. I mean, like I said, I could go through each team and find a surprise even within each team, but it was just a chaotic year. It was really fun to keep track of and like follow. Really fun time though. Like, and I'm excited about this championship. Really excited about it.
I'll throw a curveball in for you, Kent, this year. How about Iowa's offense? They finally found something.
Yeah, they did. I mean, there was still times where we saw that, like for Iowa, I think the most frustrating part was the hesitancy to go to Braden Sullivan when Cade was so bad. And I think what I read into it, like just from being on Twitter and what I hear from fans and stuff like that, is like they were ready to move on from him quicker. And then once he got in and got hurt, they were really lost at quarterback. And then that's kind of what led to some of the weird loss, like the Michigan State loss. I still feel like that's one of the weirdest losses of the year in the Big Ten. Like I can't believe that happened still. But yeah, I think with Tim Lester being there this year, they definitely found some things on offense. Sometimes it took a little bit longer. Like that Minnesota game is a good example of it. Like really good game up until halftime. And then once they got a chance to get a break, go look at some film at halftime, dominated Minnesota on the ground the second half. And that was really fun to watch. So, or if you're an Iowa fan, I guess if you're a Minnesota fan, you didn't like that.
A lot of future up there with Iowa's offense, with Tim Lester coming back, obviously with the resume that he has over at Western Michigan and has that Matt LaFleur pedigree with him after spending last year with the Packers. Speaking of offensive coordinators, and I'm glad we're still on that topic, especially in the Big Ten, Eric Bieniemy, the Eric Bieniemy experiment in Los Angeles is over. UCLA firing him after one season. The Bruins finished 117th in total offense. I know I'm a Baton Rouge guy, Kent, and I watched them when they played LSU. And throughout the first half, this was a team that I think really was arguably the worst offense even at that point before it became official. And then once I saw how LSU played in the second half, after what UCLA kind of did to keep it close in the first half against LSU with the run game and stuff. But overall, this was just a mess of an offense that Eric Bieniemy inherited. And to be honest with you, it's one of the main reasons why I don't think he's going to be a future head coach, because let's just be honest, with what he did at Kansas City, we knew who was really running that offense. We love Eric Bieniemy. We love the story of what he has and what he did as a contributor with being a two-time Super Bowl champion with the Chiefs. But once you got him outside of KC, I think that's when his flaws started to develop as a play caller. And I know part of it is because of a bad roster that he had at UCLA going into their first year under the Deshaun Foster area. But where does UCLA go from here? Who do they need to go search for in the coordinator control? And where does Eric Bieniemy go from here?
Yeah, those are both really good questions, and that's where I can rely on my name casual Big Ten, because I stop at head coaches. I don't really know where they go to look for a new offensive coordinator or where Eric's going. But as far as their season this year, I think that the ineptitude came from them not committing to running the ball. There's 5 guys in the Big Ten right now that have more rushing yards than UCLA had for the season, which I think is insane that would happen to any team. Like they just refused to run the ball, and maybe they couldn't run the ball. Maybe that was part of the problem. But, I thought towards the middle of that schedule, like when they went on that little 3-game winning streak, I felt like he was starting to get some credit. Like, oh, okay, he's starting to figure out what's going to actually work on this offense. And what was working at that time was Ethan Garbers all the time. Like massive amounts of pass plays and just relying on him to get the ball down the field and go score points. And they still, like, they had a couple games in there where they finally got some like respectable rushing yards. But to me, it all goes back to that. Like, maybe they should get back to, to answer your question, finding a guy that's more committed to like that old school Big Ten type of play where they want to start with the run and then go to the pass next, instead of what UCLA was trying to do was like, we're pass first, we're pass second, we'll run it if we absolutely have to, but then we're going to be pass fourth and fifth as well. So maybe a guy like that will be helpful for their program going forward. I'm not sure.
Staying on the topic of coaches, do you think that Ryan Day is on the hot seat once you get into next year?
That's such a good question. If I'm a fan, yes. Like, they put a lot of stock, from what I have been hearing, they put so much stock into the Michigan game. Fans do. Like, some fans aren't even excited about the fact that they're about to be one of the 12 teams in the college football playoff, which is the ultimate goal, right? Is to go win a national championship. They're still set up to do that. They still, I believe, last time I checked, were the third best odds to win the national championship. So me, as not a Ohio State fan, as someone who just follows them, I think that he's doing fine. He's got his team set up to, if he really turns this right now, he can use that game as motivation to go say, hey, that was our bad game. Let's get back to what we do. Let's go win a national championship right now, and everybody will forget about this. Well, maybe everyone won't forget about it, but they'll still have a national championship. So it all depends on who you ask. If I'm the athletic director, it's such a tough decision, but I think that I'm okay with it. And I look at the class that's coming in for next year. I look at all the games he's won, all the times that he gets into the college football playoff and sets his team up to go win a national championship. That's what everybody wants. And if you're a fan that's saying you want to fire Ryan Day, you have to have a guy that you think is going to come in and be better, right? And I don't know if Mike Vrabel's that guy, because I don't know if he wants to coach college football. It's a grind. It's a lot of work. And it's harder, I would argue, than being an NFL coach with the recruiting. So I don't know who they're going to go get if they do fire him. If, like I said, if I'm the athletic director, I'm okay with Ryan Day because of where he sets his team up towards the end of each year. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree?
Here's where I'm at, to be honest with you. Let's look at his record. 66-10 as a head coach. He spent the first two as the OC with Urban Meyer. You've been to 3 college football playoffs, 4 actually, in the 6 years that you've been there, all since 2019. And you're going to give up on a coach that has brought you there, that literally, after the ending that was a total disaster of the Urban Meyer era and how it ended with all the controversy that happened with the assistant coach and the assault allegations against him and what Urban Meyer had to do with it and how he kind of got run out of Columbus like that and what he inherited. He inherited a gold mine. Of course, if you're an Ohio State fan, you want national championships. You want to be able to continue to do that. And this is where I'm about to start pissing a couple people off, Kent. The Big Ten cannot compete with the SEC. If you cannot even dominate your own in-conference rival, and the record has shown, you failed to do it against Clemson in the semis, where you had plenty of opportunities. You failed to do it against Alabama. You got run out of the stadium in that football game. You were a missed field goal away from going to the national championship. That was probably the closest one that you ever had. And I agree. I think that Georgia should not have been playing in that national championship in 2023. I think that should have been Ohio State raising another trophy for the first time since 2014. But here's the thing. The last 2 years has been very, very inconsistent, to say the least. We saw from last week's performance from Will Howard, or that let's be honest. Kyle McCord wasn't really the problem in Ohio State. The problem was how he was set up to develop. He caught a lot of crap from fans and the media alike from how he played. And you're seeing with what he's doing right now in Fran Brown's offense that is almost eerily similar to what Ryan Day's offense is about. And he's having the same success. So what's up with Ohio State? To me, I think it's about developing your guys. You came into this year with arguably the most loaded roster in all of college football. You were supposed to go undefeated, and you were a favorite to go win the national championship. You should still, but now the pressure is even more on Ryan Day. I'll say this. He won't be on the hot seat, but if he goes one and done in the postseason, that's going to be a long offseason for Ohio State and a lot of talks in the booster club as well as amongst the players to say, do we really want to play for a guy that what we saw after the post-game brawl that is just standing around with his hands in his pocket, watching the fight unfold between them and Michigan? Or do we want to play for a coach that's going to fight for us despite the loss, that is going to help us at the end of the day? That's my 2 cents. I don't care if people agree or disagree with me. That's just my take at the end of the day. And that's what I've observed from this Ohio State team.
I agree with the one and done sentiment. Like, if he doesn't win at least one game or maybe even 2, I'm not sure. Maybe he has to go to the national championship to atone for 0-4 against Michigan the last 4 years. I'm not sure because I'm not in those conversations. I don't know what their athletic department is thinking. I think that the only pushback I have on the SEC comment is that they gotta show us this year. I think that the Big Ten has a better opportunity this year to knock out the SEC teams because if I'm not mistaken, and maybe I am mistaken about this because I missed the show the other night, but the Big Ten's going to have 4 teams in. I think the SEC is only going to have 3. Is that right? Or are they going to have 4 as well?
Oregon, Penn State's a shoe in. Ohio State, Indiana's going to be in.
What I'm saying is the SEC going to have 4 though. Okay. Texas, Georgia.
God, ain't no telling at this point, dude. Texas, I don't either or whoever wins or the winner, both Texas and Georgia are shoe-ins. I don't think the committee's going to crap on Georgia's win against Tennessee, and I don't think they're going to crap on their win against Texas despite having 3 losses, and 2 of them being on the road and one of them being in the championship game. Tennessee's going to definitely get in. We'll have to see with that 4th one what it looks like with Alabama, Ole Miss, and obviously South Carolina. So
maybe they do have 4
in. They're probably going to get 4 in, but it just depends on what they do with a 10-2 Miami. That's not in their own conference title.
Right. I think that I think my point is though that the Big Ten won it last year. I think that they proved. Maybe it's just Michigan though because it wasn't the whole conference that won it. Michigan won it. So until they take the crown back, I don't know if we can say the Big Ten can't compete with the SEC because I think that there's a higher chance that the Big Ten wins it this year than the SEC with Oregon and Ohio State as the 2 teams that I would say have a good path to go win it. Even Penn State, they're going to get a home. They're probably going to get a home first round game. So they'll be right involved as well. So,
it'd be stupid if they didn't because their only 2 losses are going to be to the number 1 and 2 teams in the land at that time.
Yeah. So I'll put up our teams like the Big Ten teams against any of the SEC teams right now. I'm not really worried about it. I think we can compete with them. And we do. And we did last year.
I'll give you that. But since 2006, Ken, I hate to remind you, 15 of the last 18 teams that have competed for a national championship have played in the SEC 3 times. We got an SEC versus SEC matchup in the national title. But now with the expanded 12 team, you're going to see a lot more conferences get a shot at going to compete for a national championship. That's what the point of expanding the playoff was to let the conferences get a better shot despite what they look at because the committee's not looking at strength of schedule this year. which I think they really should, but they're not going to. They're just looking at who's beating people to sleep, which is why Indiana's getting in as a shoe-in. And then people are going to say at the end of the day, they may be a one and done. They could win a game. Who knows? But if they do go one and done, people are going to say, oh, well, they never should have gotten in. Over who? Who are you going to put Indiana in over?
Yeah.
Who are you going to have to replace? They're beating dudes to sleep. What are you going to do? This is on the committee. This is on the NC2A that put themselves in a predicament. They knew at the end of the day, when we set this up with 12 teams, we're going to give more dudes opportunities. We're going to give more programs opportunities to compete for a national championship. We're going to try to avoid what we had last year with the Florida State issue. Unfortunately, we're going to have an even bigger issue with Miami potentially getting left out over a 3-loss SEC team. But hey, I mean that's what the beauty of college football is. We live for the controversy. We as the media love it when we see stuff like that, and that's what keeps our jobs going, is when we have stuff like this that we can report on.
Yeah, I'm at the point this year where anybody with 2 or more losses that doesn't get in, I don't feel sorry for any of them. Like last year, you had to go basically undefeated, and we were only looking at 1-loss teams. So I think that if you're undefeated, obviously, well, I guess it's not obvious. That didn't happen last year. But going forward, if you're undefeated or you have 1 loss and you get left out of a 12-team playoff, I will be very sorry for you, and I'll be surprised if that ever happens. Anybody with 2 or more, though, you got to go win more games. You can't lose twice, can't lose 3 times, and then cry at the end of the year when you don't get into a 12-team playoff. Go win more games. So that's how I feel now with the 12-team expanded one. Sorry, I missed what you said.
I said especially in the Big 12 and ACC.
Yeah, totally. I agree. So I think it'll be fun. I'm very excited about the 12-team playoff, though. I think I've always thought that 8 was probably the best number. And we skipped right over that and went to 12, which I thought was weird, but I love it, though. It's going to be more games into December and into January, and it's going to be really fun to watch all these teams. And like you said, teams from different conferences getting an opportunity. I think that the first week's games are going to be super fun because we're used to these games being in huge venues, and they're going to just be, which there's still going to be a lot of huge venues, but they're going to be home games for some of these teams, and that's going to be such an interesting environment. Like playoff home game at Penn State is going to be absolutely nuts, or a playoff home game potentially for Ohio State, going to be crazy. So we'll see how everything shakes out when they actually do announce everything, but I'm very excited about it, though, and I'm excited about the Big Ten Conference and their chances to advance in this tournament.
Ken, were you ever at Big Ten Media Days this year?
I was not. I was at the lake with my family during that.
Gotcha. I asked because going back to the UCLA ordeal, I had an impression of what their season would look like after Deshaun Foster's opening speech, and look where we're at now with where they went. Now, I will say it was better than expected. I was thinking they were going to go maybe 2-10 or 3-9 in the Big Ten, but a 5-7 record with an irrelevant offense that got away from what was their bread and butter in the run game. Honestly, from a perspective, if you're a UCLA fan, you're disappointed. But at the end of the day, it's only the building blocks in year 1 of this era, and it's only just you're thinking you should get a bowl game next year. I don't know if it's going to happen. We'll have to see with what they do in the transfer portal as well as recruiting. They got to win in the recruiting division, though, because they've been getting their, excuse my French, they've been getting their ass handed to by these other Cal teams. Like Cal starting to pick up steam. USC has been dominant for the last 10, 15 years in recruiting. Oregon is starting to kick their ass. I mean, you're getting all these West Coast teams that are going to continue to produce and really show that they can get 10 for a respective conference title. You're going to be behind the 8 ball, just like a lot of the rest of the teams around the rest of the conference that are typically not considered a blue blood, and you're just going to continue to fall behind the 8 ball until you can develop your dudes at the end of the day.
Yeah, for UCLA, I feel like that team. I'll give them a little bit of flowers here because the first game of the year was the Hawaii game. I thought that was one of the worst performances I've seen from any Big Ten team this whole season. They ended up winning the game, but beating that Hawaii team by 3 points and basically needing like a desperation touchdown towards the end of the game to actually win the game was embarrassing. I thought that they should have blown them out. I don't care if it was at Hawaii. Like, that's not like a home field advantage environment. I was expecting much at that point. I was like, this is the worst team in the conference. Even after the win, I was saying this team's really bad. But then, going through their schedule, the next 4 games that they had, those 4 teams combined for, I believe, 6 losses all season. So it was just absolutely brutal schedule for them after the Hawaii game, and really didn't compete in any of those games. But to give them the flowers, though, after that, I think that we saw a team that, like I said, the offense started saying, hey, we're going to rely almost primarily on passing. The defense really started stepping up and started shutting down some teams finally. And I think that there's some spots that they can point to. I never thought that they would be able to beat Nebraska after what I saw in that Hawaii game. And they beat Nebraska. They beat Iowa. Like, those type of games they can look back on and say, all right, that's a building block for what we can do next year and what kind of team we can be. So I think that they're one of the most improved teams from where the season started at week 1 or week 0 to where we're at right now. I think that they improved quite a bit. And I believe in Coach Foster. I've tweeted that out many times. I think Coach Foster is the guy for that program. And a couple other things go their way, and the schedule being one of them. And I know probably sound like I'm making excuses for them, but the schedule turns out, and I don't know what their schedule is next year, but if it's a little bit better, I think we do see a bowl team next year.
Let's stick around the recruiting trail because I briefly mentioned that for a little bit. How about Oregon this year? Absolutely dominating. They get a big flip from Jiren. How do you say this dude's last name? Kiwe Sagapulete?
It's one of the names that they always get. Like, they always have names like that, right?
That's how you say his name, by the way. I just went ahead and
you looked it up,
posted it right there. That's what it is. I have no idea how to say that, to be honest with you. But
I don't know. I just guessed at that. It looks like Sagapulute.
Yeah, that's close enough for me. But how about that? Getting a huge commit from him after being a long-time Cal commit for the last several months. Here was a guy that was an Elite 11 finalist. Him, Achilles Smith Jr., now in the mix over in Eugene, Oregon. What's the future with those 2 quarterbacks coming in, obviously having to fill in for a legendary quarterback like Dylan Gabriel and what he has to leave behind? And how does Dan Lanning, if he does decide to stay with Oregon, knowing that he has 2 years left on his contract, develop those 2 dudes into what you've seen from Dylan Gabriel?
Well, I think that whichever guy it is, the first thing that you'll have to do is be patient with it, because what Dylan Gabriel is right now is basically a college football veteran. He's been around for so long. He's seen so many big games, and neither of those guys are going to come in and be exactly what he is as far as composure and poise immediately. So it'll be a few years before they're a guy like him just off the rip. It's going to take a couple years just to be that. For Dan Lanning, I don't know why. I would never leave Oregon. Like, this is like built-in recruiting every single year. He gets high-level recruits. They're going to be highly ranked every year. They're always going to have a good team. I would never leave. Like, this could be like setting up for a dynasty type situation. I'm interested. Because to be honest, like I said, I'm not super locked into all the coaching stuff. Where would he even go? I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything like that. Where do you hear him going to?
He's had a couple NFL offers come his way. I could potentially see that. He might. It just depends on where he ends up going at the end of the day. He could go back down to the SEC, but it all just depends on what type of money he gets, because he's getting paid $5 million a year. And depending on what they do with this upcoming year, knowing that he's going into his final 2 years of his contract, I think Oregon will increase that salary. But at the end of the day, money talks at the end of the day, and it's about what you can do with that recruiting pedigree that you've been so known for ever since you were at Georgia a couple years ago.
I would be like, again, I'm kind of an outsider when it comes to the coaching stuff like this, but I would be really surprised if Oregon wouldn't match anybody if they really wanted to keep this program what it is. It's not going to be like we let Dan Lanning go and everything's going to stay perfectly the same and we're going to go undefeated again next year. Like what you just said, some of the recruiting or a lot of the recruiting is because of him. A lot of the like scheme and everything that they do is because of him and like who he hires and who he has on staff. So I would, with the amount of resources that a team like Oregon has, I would be very shocked if they would let money be an issue for a reason why that he would leave. So I would stay forever. And I'm excited about Oregon this year. I'm excited about their future. I think that they're, like I said, built in, if he stays around, going to be one of the top teams in the conference and in the country for as however long they want it to be.
Kim Peterson joining us from the Casual Big Ten podcast. You can holler at them at Casual Big Ten. Real quick before we let you go, Kent, because I know you're kind of on a time crunch here. Big Ten title game this upcoming Saturday in Indianapolis. Penn State, Oregon, a matchup that we've been waiting for. Probably Penn State's defense and the electricity that they have over in Happy Valley on the defensive side of the ball going up against an electric offense in Oregon. Who you got and why?
It's crazy that it's Thursday already, and you're the first person that's asked me that. And I've done multiple podcasts this week. So, first of all, great question. And I haven't really thought about it yet. What's that? I missed what you said.
I said, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. But anyways, I mean, the easy pick is just to say like Oregon's going to go in and win this game. But I think that my path for Penn State to win is a difficult one. That defensive line has to be great, because when I think of Oregon teams from the past, I think of like they can spread it out. They can run a lot of misdirection, and they still do a lot of that stuff. But this is an offensive line that can also push you around. They can line up and square up with you, and they're not going to be afraid of Penn State's defensive line or linebackers or anything like that. They'll be able to run it. So, and their running backs are great, by the way. So I think that if early on I see that Oregon's having trouble running the ball and everything I just said was wrong, then I will like Penn State a lot, and that's their path to getting a win, is to start by stopping the run. Obviously, that kind of is almost in every football game. But I like Oregon in this game, though. I think that they've had the bigger games already. When I look at these two teams, I think the measuring stick is Ohio State, right? Because they both played them, and they both got to play them at home. And one team lost and one team won. So for me, it kind of really boils down to that. Oregon got that win against Ohio State. Penn State wasn't able to do it. So if I'm Oregon's coaches, I'm going straight to that Ohio State tape and saying, hey, like, how do we beat these guys? How do we beat them on the road? I think that taking football away, it's a really exciting game. I talked about this over the weekend right after everything happened, that I'm more excited about this championship game now that it's not a game that we have seen already this year, right? Because if it was Ohio State and Oregon, it's like, we've kind of already we've seen this script already. We see how this plays out. But now that it's a fresh matchup, I was like, I kind of want to go to this game now. I want to go see what's going to happen. I'm not going, but I would love to be there. So I'm picking Oregon. Long-winded way of saying I like Oregon to win this game ultimately, but I think it's going to be a really close game. I think that in the stadium, both of these fan bases are super passionate. I know it's farther away for Oregon, but they don't care. I think it'll be 50-50 fans in the stands. I don't think that Penn State's going to – I could be totally wrong about this, but I don't think just because Penn State's closer, they're going to have more fans there. I think it's going to be even. And that's kind of what you want in a conference championship, right? Like, split down the middle. No one knows who's going to win. Like, even amount of fans in the stands and a really close game. And I think that's what we're going to get on Saturday. But I like Oregon.
This is going to be a hell of a game.
Yeah.
You got the offensive player of the year in the Big Ten in Dylan Gabriel. You got the defensive player of the year in Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter's been a man amongst boys all season. He's finally starting to get to where his potential has been ever since he moved from linebacker to the outside on playing at 5-tech defensive lineman. And he's going to be one of the most dominant players that we've seen from Penn State since Micah Parsons. There is no doubt in my mind that Oregon has all the firepower to win this football game. But I'm telling you right now, if Penn State can dominate the line of scrimmage, and if their defensive line can shut down the run game that has been so dominant from Oregon, that has gone so unnoticed with what Jordan James has done this year and the type of season that he's had. The guy's run for over 1,000 yards this year, and he's averaging almost 6 yards a carry, and he's a second team All Big Ten. He's a guy that has been prone to break out at some point this year. But mark my words, Kent, this is going to be a game that is going to be won in the trenches. Who's going to win it? Is it going to be the dominance of that Oregon front that has been able to protect Dylan Gabriel when it matters most? That could be a finalist for a Joe Moore Award, going up against that Penn State defensive line with the best defensive player in college football in Abdul Carter? Or will it be the opposite? Will it be Penn State's offensive line? Can they run down the throat of that Oregon defense? That has proved time and time again how good that they can be, how they might be the most underrated team, especially on the defensive front in all of the Big Ten. With that being said, give me Oregon to win this one. It's a tight one, but I think that Dylan Gabriel, at the end of the day, is going to get the ball last, and he's going to be the one that comes out and gets the victory. Kent Peterson from Casual Big Ten joining us here on the College Football Nightcap as we get close to that hour mark. Kent, it's been a pleasure having you, my man. Have a great week. Let's have a great start to the championship Saturday, or to the championship weekend tomorrow. Got some action going on and around the other G5 schools, so gonna have a great time watching some college football. So have a great one, brother, and take care of yourself.
Hey, thanks, Lucas. Thanks for having me on, man.
That's going to do it for us here on the College Football Nightcap. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe if you are on YouTube. If you're watching on X, make sure you give us a follow at Casual Big Ten, at Lucas_Hill23. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you all next time on the Nightcap.
Purchase your tracks today.